Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. My name is Jon Z. Great to be here with all of you today discussing and teaching the uncut word of Elohim. Make sure you subscribe to the Philadelphia Assemblies on YouTube. Check out the latest video from Pastor Bob Farr and Eric Burkholz entitled Signs from the Heavens. They did a really good job at explaining Yahuah's calendar. Want to learn more about that? Go to the YouTube page, subscribe, like, and view all the great teachings that we have on there. We're all doing our best to discuss and teach the uncut word of Elohim, the word of Yahuah. And today's message may ruffle some feathers a bit. I'm really excited about it, though. I hope that everybody could gain something from this. Really, especially non-denominational or regular Christians, quote unquote, who seem to have a problem at times understanding what Paul wrote about in Romans. The title of today's message is going to be called Beware the False Gospel of Hyper Grace. Again, the title is Beware the False Gospel of Hyper Grace. Now, a lot of this is going to pertain to Romans. I want to start, though, with defining what sin is. Probably should be doing this for most videos that I make because Paul really expounds upon sin. A lot of it is in Romans. So, what is sin? And I want this definition to be in your heads as we break down the rest of the scriptures that I'm going to be reading here today. So, the definition of sin, according to 1 John 3:4, TS 2009 version. Everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. KJV, whosoever committeth sin transgresseth also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. NIV, the nearly inspired version, everyone who sins breaks the law. In fact, sin is lawlessness. So sin equals lawlessness, equals transgression of the law, equals not obeying Torah. Law equals Torah, equals instruction, equals teaching. So keep all of that in mind as we read Paul here in Romans chapters 5, 6, 7, a couple of verses I pulled out. Keep all that in mind. When sin is discussed, it's a transgression of the law. Transgression of the law equals transgression of the Torah, equals not following the Torah. Keep that in mind as we read here. Romans 3:31, Paul says, do we then nullify the Torah through the belief? Let it not be, or God forbid. On the contrary, we establish the Torah. The church likes to grab a couple of lines from Paul, a couple of verses, and say, oh, here's what he means. Well, here's what he said here. This is a verse, Romans 3:31. How do you reconcile that? It says, do we then nullify the Torah? Do we get rid of the Torah through belief? No, let it not be. On the contrary, we establish the Torah. I'm going to read all of Romans chapter 6 with commentary next. People continue to twist up his words. People continue to twist up what he was trying to say. Now, to me, and I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but to me, when I read this, I hear law. I hear Torah. I hear upholding commandments. I don't hear nor really see lawlessness or grace superseding the law, or, as the Christians put it, hyper grace. So here's Romans 6, the whole chapter. Here's what Paul says. What then shall we say? Shall we continue in sin to let favor or grace increase? Let it not be. How shall we who died to sin still live in it? Or do you not know that as many of us as were immersed in Messiah Yahushua were immersed into his death? We were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, that as Messiah was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in the newness of life. For if we have come to be grown together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also of the resurrection, knowing this, that our old man, our sinful lives, transgression of the Torah lives, was impaled with him, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no longer. We don't want to be serving sin anymore. So if we serve sin, we are serving transgression of the law. We are serving anti-Torah behavior. Paul goes on to say, for he who has died has been made right from sin. And if we died with Messiah, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Messiah, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer rules over him. For in that he died to sin once and for all. But in that he lives to Elohim. So you also, Paul, calling out all of us, calling out the Romans, but now all of us here today. So you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Elohim and Messiah Yahushua our Master. Be dead to sin. Be dead to transgression of the law. Be dead to anti-Torah behavior. Be dead to breaking the commandments. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body, to obey it in its desires, neither present yourselves members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin. Don't let sin reign in your mortal body. Don't let transgression of the Torah, transgression of the law, reign in your mortal body. So the law is done away with. Don't let that doctrine reign in your mortal body. It's sin. It's wrong. It's anti-Torah. What is he going to say? But present yourselves to Elohim as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to Elohim, being alive from the dead. We died with Yahushua HaMashiach in immersion, and now we are a new person. Death also equals sin. The wages of sin, which I'm going to read here in a minute, are death. So by serving sin, by prioritizing sin, by saying the law has no meaning, it doesn't even matter, you are a servant of sin, you're a servant of disobedience. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under Torah, but under grace? That's what Paul says. Should we sin because we are not under Torah, but under grace? Let it not be. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin to death or of obedience to righteousness? Sin equals death. Sin equals transgression of the law. Sin equals anti-Torah. Sin equals you hate the Torah. You hate his right rulings. You don't like his statutes, his judgments, the Sabbath, clean eating, the feast days, etc., etc. So should we sin because we're under grace? No! That's what Paul says here. Goes on to say still, Romans 6, but thanks to Elohim that you were servants of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of teaching to which you were entrusted. And having been set free from sin, you became servants of righteousness. Servants of righteousness, you were set free from sin. You don't become servants of disobedience, servants of hyper grace, servants of I'll do what I want. No, servants of righteousness. Righteousness equals Torah, by the way. Paul says, I speak as a man because of the weakness of your flesh, for even as you did present your members as servants of uncleanness and of lawlessness, resulting in lawlessness. So now, here's what you have to do now, because this is what you were before. You were lawless. Present your members as servants of righteousness, resulting in set apartness or holiness. For when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. If you chose, and this is my commentary, if you chose to let grace abound and neglect the law, you are still a servant of sin, meaning you have no righteousness. For when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. So today, when people say that grace covers me, I'm okay, I don't need to worry about any of this stuff, I can do what I want, you're being a servant to sin. You're not being a servant to righteousness. And when you are a servant of sin, there is no such thing as righteousness. You are free from righteousness. You don't even know what that is. That's scary to hear. What fruit, therefore, were you having then, over which you are now ashamed? For the end thereof is death. Correct. But now, having been set free from sin and having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in set apartness or holiness, and the end everlasting life. For the wages of sin is death. For the wages of sin is death. But the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting life, and Messiah Yahushua, our Master. There was a lot there. I tried to do my best to break it all down, but essentially what Paul is saying, if you are going to be a servant to sin, then you are a servant to lawlessness and a servant to anti-Torah behavior. You hate the Torah. You hate his right rulings and statutes and judgments. Isn't that what the church preaches today? Right? Do what thou wilt, which is a satanic doctrine. They preach that we're under grace, we're not under the law, meaning we don't even have to worry about that stuff. We could do Christmas and Easter and Halloween and worship other gods because it doesn't matter. Who cares? And look what Paul said to that. The wages of sin are death. And if we are not going to be immersed in Yahushua HaMashiach's name and become a new person and put away our old lives of sin, which is what it said here, of lawlessness, then we have a major issue. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm perfect and that I uphold the Torah perfectly every day. Nobody does. But I will tell you that I do my best and I try my best to do it. Putting in that effort and having a circumcised heart means more than the opposite, which is I hate the Torah, I don't want to do it. That's legalism. You're a Judaizer. Get away from me. And ironically enough, it's actually Yahusha who says, get away from me, ye workers of lawlessness, ye who break God's laws. See how the roles are flipped? Yahusha is going to tell people who don't care about the law or Torah at all to get away from him. But yet today, if you try to preach to somebody about the law and about its importance, they'll cite Paul, cite him out of context, say, get away from me, you're a Judaizer, you're an evildoer, you're serving yourself, you're being self-righteous. Horrible stuff. And I don't mean this to be insulting or arrogant. I mean this to be, we all got to wake up and hear this. The church has to hear this. They are misinterpreting Paul, Shaul, and they're causing other people to stumble, sin greatly. And if they're going to be a servant of sin, as we just read, then they're in really big trouble. Got 3 more verses left here. Romans 7:7. Paul, still writing. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Let it not be. However, I did not know sin except through the Torah. For also the covetousness I knew not, if the Torah had not said, you shall not covet. What is he saying here? The Torah is an instruction manual for life every day. By knowing the Torah, you know sin. Not because the Torah is sin, because now you know, okay, here is what it says, here's what I have to not do or do, conversely. Let me do my best to follow this, to be pleasing unto Yahuah, to walk in the way that his son Yahushua HaMashiach walked. Let me go that route instead of, like some people today. I don't want to do the Torah. The Torah is sin. Some people say that today. You're being self-righteous. You're going to go to hell. You're a doctrine of the devil because you follow the Torah. You do your best to uphold it and pursue it. And yet Paul says right here, is the Torah sin? Let it not be. So is the Torah lawless? Right? Is the Torah unrighteous? Let it not be. And yet you'll hear the complete opposite from the church. They have twisted up his doctrine and they've done a whole 360 on it. They've misidentified words, and they've made it sound like the Torah is legalism. Trying to do the Torah is a doctrine of the devil, when really it's the opposite. By letting go of the Torah, by saying do what thou wilt, by not repenting or listening or trying to walk in this walk, that's the doctrine of demons. Romans 7:12 through 13. So that the Torah truly is set apart, and the command set apart and righteous and good. Oh, the Torah is set apart, righteous and good. Therefore, has that which is good become death to me? Oh, wow. Has that which is good become death to me? Have I decided, you know what? No, I'm not going to do it at all. Let it not be. The law is done away with, right? When Jesus was on the quote-unquote cross, he was crucified and the law died with him. That's what the church says. The law died with him. Here's Paul saying, has the Torah become death to me? Let it not be. Wow, that's mind-blowing to me. When I read that, and then you hear somebody else say the complete opposite and twist up the words, it's unbelievable. Paul says this then too, but the sin, that sin might be manifest, was working death in me through what is good. The Torah is compared to here as good, and then sin was working death in him. So that sin, through the command, might become an exceedingly great sinner. See what that says? I'll read this all without commentary so you can hear it again. So that the Torah truly is set apart, and the command set apart and righteous and good. Therefore, has that which is good become death to me? Let it not be. But the sin, that sin might be manifest, was working death in me through what is good. So that sin through the command might become an exceedingly great sinner. Sin is what was killing him. Sin is what was bringing him down, not the Torah. The Torah is good. And should the Torah become death to Paul, Shaul? He said, let it not be. Or in some translations, God forbid. And finally, Romans 7:22 through 25. This will end it here. Last reading. For I delight in the Torah of Elohim according to the inward man, but I see another Torah. And I want to emphasize here, this word Torah is going to be lowercase t. This is not the Torah, it's a Torah. Oral Torah, lawless Torah, whatever it is, another governing document that is not the Torah. So, I'm going to reread this again and emphasize uppercase and lower cases so you guys understand it and hear it. Romans 7:22 through 25. For I delight in the uppercase Torah of Elohim according to the inward man, but I see another lowercase Torah in my members, battling against the lowercase Torah of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the Torah lowercase of sin, which is in my members. Wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of death? Thanks to Elohim through Yahushua Messiah our Master. So then, with the mind I myself truly serve, the capital T Torah of Elohim, but with the flesh, the Torah lowercase t of sin. The lowercase t Torah is the Torah or the instruction or the teaching or the law of sin, which is lawlessness. The Torah of Elohim is good and righteous and lawful and just. He delights in Yahuah's Torah. Captivity here is referred to as the Torah of sin. Sin equals lawlessness, equals a transgression of the law, equals anti-Torah. I continue to bring that up. That way it stays in your memory. Just remember that obedience to Yahuah's Torah still applies. As you can see by these passages in the commonly misunderstood Romans, Paul exalts the Torah. This was after Yahushua died and was resurrected. The law did not die on the cross. The law continued. After Yahushua went up into heaven, it continues today. It does. Has heaven and earth passed away? Because that's what Yahushua said. Until heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle of the law or the Torah shall pass away. So next time you read Paul, specifically the church, but even all of us, whether you believe in the law or not or understand its application, it's important to make sure that we read it in context, not with one or two verses, and break down exactly what he's saying, line by line, verse by verse, and understand, okay, what exactly is he talking about here? I just read all this, right? Seems to me like Paul was a Torah-observant man who loved Yahuah, loved Yahushua HaMashiach, and did everything he could to observe it, and told other people to do so, including the Romans at the time, trying to convert people in Rome who at the time were pagan. But according to the church today, we're under grace, we're not under the law. And grace allows us to sin constantly without any consequences whatsoever. Beware of the false gospel of hyper grace. Beware of somebody preaching another gospel to you, a different gospel to you, one that emphasizes lawlessness, one that emphasizes do what thou wilt, one that emphasizes anything but what Yahuah commanded. The Torah was commanded. The Old Testament was read from daily. Yahushua quoted the Old Testament. Paul quoted the Old Testament tons of times. And Yahushua was the only one in history to be perfect. Perfection means he never sinned. Sin means he never transgressed the law. And every day we need to do our best to try and do that. We're never going to be perfect, but striving to do so, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And, believe it or not, it's kind of commanded. Thank you again for watching. We'll see you next time. Subscribe to the Philadelphia Assemblies if you like this message. So long.